The suspect in yesterday's shooting in Gordon is now in custody. News 4's Devon Sellers has been on this story since it first broke on Thursday. She joins us live in the studio now with the latest. Devon?
Well, Gordon residents are breathing a sigh of relief tonight now that the teenage suspect is behind bars. It took multiple officers to find him, and they didn't have to go very far from the scene. It took dozens of law enforcement officers nearly 24 hours to capture this man, 17-year-old Brandon Smith.
You just can't take everybody home and go to bed and start over the next day when you've got a violent criminal out in the community.
Smith was captured just before 10 Friday morning. Police found him about a quarter of a mile from his home in the woods. Houston County Sheriff Andy Hughes says it all started as a robbery Thursday afternoon. It happened at a home on Sumler Farm Road, just around the corner from Smith's home. Police say the teen was armed with a shotgun when he confronted the homeowner. They say Smith forced the victim inside the home and took some items. Then police say the homeowner was shot in the chest.
This is a very dangerous type situation. It's one of those situations that we just cringe when we hear radio call go out.
Police immediately set up a perimeter with hopes of containing Smith, but neighbors were on edge all night long.
Scared, very scared, because it's touching home to us, and we just don't know where it's going to happen next.
As Smith was brought into the sheriff's office, you could hear him say, "YOLO," meaning you only live once.
He can only live once, but he can do it for the rest of his life in prison as far as I'm concerned.
Smith faces several charges, including attempted murder, burglary, robbery, and even kidnapping. Reg.
Devon, thanks a lot. Now, police say the victim was an elderly man. His injuries were not life-threatening.
And while that rain dampened the holiday for most people, the weather could cause problems for some people well into the weekend. News 4's Devon Sellers was in Hartford today, where unfortunately people there are kind of used to this situation, right, Devon?
Absolutely, Tessa. As I drove into Hartford this morning, I could already see water filling the ditches and standing on the roads, and some people were already beginning to prepare for that potential flooding. For Linda Powell and Daryl Woods, flooding is nothing new in their Hartford neighborhood.
All the drains around here goes to one pipe, and then they pipe it down to the bay. And we just hope that it don't get stopped up, because if it gets stopped up, the water backs up.
And this is what happens. You're looking at video from this past February. Extreme flooding that forced the couple to use a boat in their own front yard. However, the weather conditions are a little different this time around. That gives Daryl and Linda hope.
And I'm praying it don't flood this time. I'm hoping they've got something done.
And they've already been preparing, moving some things to higher ground and pulling their boat around to the front of the house in case they can't get out.
I try to keep boards and metal, and we got some barricade stuff. I brought some ties in here to put around the house, and I try to just put stuff up to keep it from just, washing it away, because once the house starts floating, people riding by, it like takes it off the box.
They're not the only ones concerned. Shannon Vineyard is spending his holiday trying to keep others dry. They're digging a drainage ditch around the Hartford retirement village, hoping to keep the rain out.
It's not my job to dig ditches, it's my job to help take care of these people. This is a home and they depend on us to do that. We're not foreseeing any damage this time, and it's largely because we're out here with a preemptive strike to take care of it.
Learning a lesson that only Mother Nature could teach. Well, now Linda and Daryl have lived in their home for more than a decade, and they say they would sell, but it would be difficult to because of the history of flooding.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Devon. And News 4, we did try to contact the mayor's office to see if they've come up with a situation or a solution to that situation, I should say. But of course, because of the holiday, there was no answer.
Many people look forward to family gatherings this time of year, but for one Wiregrass family, there has been a void, a noticeable one, for the past 50 years.
News 4's Devon Sellers joins us from the site of a tragic accident. Devon?
On December 7th, 1963, the Langford family was going Christmas shopping, but that holiday tradition never happened. It's been nearly 50 years since a freak train accident at this crossing in Midland City took their lives. Every day, countless people drive over these railroad tracks in Midland City without giving them a second thought. But for others, the sight is difficult to forget.
It was something I don't want to look at again. It was horrible.
12 members of the Langford family were riding in their station wagon on December 7, 1963, When they got to this railroad crossing, witnesses say the car stalled out. Before anyone could help, a freight train hit the car. 11 of the family members were killed, 5 adults and 6 children. Jerry Seegers heard and followed the ambulance.
Train had already, it done stopped down the way, but it tore the car all to pieces. And the bodies, had the bodies covered up by the time we got there. But there was 12 on the car, and 11 of them's in the cemetery here.
Just 11, though. One Langford survived.
Every year on December the 7th, because that's the day that they passed away, it's a sad day.
Margaret was just 13 months old, escaping the crash with just some cuts and bruises, but still battling deep emotional scars.
I never cross this railroad track unless I have to, so I go all the way around Midland City to avoid it.
Margaret was raised by her aunt and says it was hard for her family to cope with such a great loss.
It was very hard. I hear them, talk about it, and I have one uncle that he lost his wife and 4 children. He lost everybody, everything. He was really, really bad. The life for him was probably the hardest, of everybody.
For 2 people who would normally be strangers, Margaret and Jerry are now tied together by these headstones. He is the caretaker where her family is buried.
Kind of sad to see a whole family wiped out. You kind of get brokenhearted when someone passes away, but when you see a whole family just destroyed in just a matter of seconds, it's kind of hard to cope with for some people.
But Margaret has learned to cope. She now has 2 sons and 3 granddaughters. Keeping her family's legacy alive is a priority.
I want my children to know what happened, and I want my grandchildren to know.
And to tell her family's story, she relies on those who knew them best.
I remember the good things. I remember life. I remember Jeannie, she was a big girl. She had long hair, always wore it in a ponytail. And always happy, always laughing, smiling. Ray, he was a little bouncing around. He was what you call hyper today. But he was happy too. They were just happy people and happy with what they had.
Although these tracks mark an end, they also mark a beginning. Forgetting the pain left on them 50 years ago, and instead celebrating the miracle who crawled away. Now, many of the churches wanted to divide the family. That's why they're buried at the Magnolia Church Cemetery. It was the only church in the area that would allow them to all be buried in one plot.
Wow, it's so nice to see Margaret being able to move on like that.
It is.
Thank you, Devon, for that great story. And the records of deadly crashes, they were not kept at that time, but as far as we can tell, this still remains the deadliest train crash in Alabama.
And by the way, the state is currently ranked 6th for vehicle-train collisions.